You might get quite confused when you hear ADD, OCD, and ODD. You know, what are they all about? So, ODD is oppositional defiant disorder. And then you get ADD, which is attention deficit disorder. And then you get OCD, where you get obsessional compulsive disorder. And I mean, what are they all about and how do they fit together and are they even related to each other? So if I had to just help you understand what the differences are, ADHD or ADD is this lack of dopamine, this neurotransmitter in the front of the brain. And ADHD is a genetic disorder. So they're lacking dopamine. They're always seeking, they're novelty seeking, they're looking for something new all the time. They are looking for new things to do. And they have a problem with dopamine. Then you get the condition OCD, OCD, which is this obsessional compulsive disorder. And that is almost the opposite spectrum. They have a problem with lack of serotonin. It's a type and a form of an anxiety. That's a completely different problem. But anybody with a mental problem is more likely to have another problem. So they kind of go together, but they're not sort of genetically related. Someone with ADHD wouldn't necessarily have OCD. But interestingly, I saw a child today which really fascinated me because initially the parents thought the child had OCD, obsessional compulsive disorder, when in fact they had ODD. They had this oppositional defiant disorder, and I'll tell you why. Because children with ADHD have something called sensory processing problems. Someone's like turned up the volume with all their senses. They get heightened awareness, so a little bit of noise is like a loud noise for them. And smells, everything is like hyped up. Someone's turned up the volume with their smell, or olfactory problems. And then on their skin, they're sort of hypersensitive to everything. And so, what was happening is children with ADHD who have sensory processing problems, if their hands get dirty or their feet get dirty, they become like obsessed about they've got to go and clean their hands all the time, which could look like, somebody who's got OCD. And in fact, they don't have OCD. OCD is this obsessional worry about a specific thing, and have this almost, once they do this like ritualistic behavior, it makes them feel more relaxed. It's almost like they've got to do it. They if they don't do it, they get very anxious about it. And it's like almost one thing at a time. They are worried about particular things. I see children whose anxiety goes really to the one extreme. Everybody gets a bit anxious, but when it's over to the one end and it's sort of extreme, that's when it becomes a problem. So some children, they've got to have their pencil in their case, otherwise they get very distressed. They've got to have their pencil and their rubber and all their little writing instruments all together. They've got to line things up. If they don't wash their hands 3 times going to the bathroom at school, then they've got a problem. And then of course ODD, that's extreme behavior, and that is related to ADHD. There's a lot of overlap, about a 40% overlap. If you've got ADHD, you've got oppositional defiant disorder, and that is a hugely physical, almost like tsunami-like behavior. It is extreme, it's defiant, sometimes physical, outbursts that are really tsunamis, not just getting up and down occasionally and having meltdowns, tantrums that go on for longer than 6 months. It's overwhelming. So ODD in a way is related to ADHD because it's also part of the executive functions. It's that inability to control your emotional state. And children with ADHD also have that, but it's more extreme. And then of course OCD is just a different neurotransmitter. It's almost like a different currency. problems with ODD and ADHD, those are dopamine problems. That's part of the braking system in the brain. And then you've got the serotonin problem, which is a different problem, which in fact is that OCD. So I hope that makes sense.